friends, I'm Carrie Jo, and this is Holy Chuckles Podcast, a space where all meets honesty and where God's gentle humor shows up in the people he chooses. So pull up a seat, take a breath, and let's look together for the sacred in the everyday and the quiet laughter of a God who delights in working through our imperfect stories. Thank you so much for joining back in to Holy Chuckles Podcast. I hope that everyone had a chance to listen to the last 3 episodes, my goodbye tour, my telling my past goodbye so I can really come into this full new version of myself. With that goodbye tour, it was me letting everything go and saying, you know what? It's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault. These are my cards, whether they were dealt to me or whether I picked them up. These were my cards. And even as a child, no, there are many things that I couldn't have changed because I didn't have the intelligence. I didn't have the emotional maturity, the spiritual maturity at all. So I did what I knew how to do, which was survive. And what I didn't change is when I came into an adult, I didn't sit with myself and figure out all those things that I went through as a kid, that my family went through, that the people in my life went through. Maybe the people in my life did to me. Maybe I did to them. I didn't have a chance to, I didn't have a chance. I didn't give myself a chance to sit down, really think about them, see what was really going on in my life to understand how I needed to change or why I wasn't letting God be the center of my life or really guide my life through everything that I needed to do or wanted to do. I really had to sit with that and say, you know what? The things that happened in your life happened. Now it's time to let them go. If we continue to relive, replay all the bad things that happened in our lives, then that's where we're going to sit. Nothing's going to change for us. And for me, that's kind of what I was doing. Well, I can't move on from this because this happened to me. I can't do this because this happened to me. Or I'm a bad person because I did this. And that's not accurate. I did those things. I learned from those lessons. People did things to me. And guess what? I learned from those people that did those things to me. Maybe it was their lesson as in what they needed to do. Just like I did things to people that weren't great, so did they. That is how kind of life works. We do things, we understand them, we move from them, we move forward. Did I think I was the only person in this world living out that? No, that's not accurate. So unfortunately, sometimes bad things happen to us so other people can learn. Good things happen to us so we understand how that feels to have those good things. It really is a give and take in life. What I was doing was I was continuously replaying all those things in my life and not moving forward from them. Then I was continuously making the same mistakes. So that goodbye tour really was a chance to let everything go. Let everything just play out and say, okay, we're done. Everything is done. We don't have to replay all of this again. We don't have to go through all of it again. We can just move forward. Now, that is what I am doing. We finished up, I finished up 1 Samuel chapter 1. I say we a lot because I'm including you in we. We you and you're listening to this. I'm talking. I hope that you're kind of interacting in your own environment where you're at. Like, yeah, no, that sounds dumb, whatever it may be. I also say we because I'm co-creating with God. So we had a Thanksgiving break. We had the goodbye tour. Now we're going to go into chapter 2, verse 1 through 11. Hannah, our inner soul, Elkanah, the divine essence, the divine order, Samuel, the gift, the inner knowing, the awakened spiritual healing. Now I'm going to bring one more into this. We let Peninnah go. Our ego is gone. Peninnah has left the building. Now we're going to bring one more character in, and it's a really good character. It's a really great character. We're bringing in God, the big God, the ultimate ground of being. I know when people hear the word God, the name God, they often picture cosmic king, ruler of throne, being somewhere up there like a sky daddy, the Alpha and the Omega as the title of authority. Those are great. And those are accurate. Those are biblical and they're metaphors. It's a way for humans to describe something infinitely beyond our comprehension. Now, when we go to ground of being, I'm not replacing the biblical and metaphors of how we talk about God, how we experience God, how we describe God. I'm going beneath them. I'm going to the depths of them. There's two ways I just explained to you about speaking about God. For me, I do them both because both of them resonate with me. The King of the universe. I said this in one of my earlier episodes. This is a personal language, a rational, emotional, symbolic language of how we describe God. God rules, God acts, God protects, God judges, God saves, God speaks. This is the language of scripture, metaphors, imagery, relationship, poetry. Hannah's language, my heart rejoices in the Lord. And we'll get to the verses in a minute, but she says in this chapter, my heart rejoices in the Lord. That tells you what God is like, but there's a deeper layer. God as the ultimate ground of being. This is ontological language, describing what God is at the deepest level. This expression means God is the reason anything exists at all. God is being itself, the source, the foundation, the reality underneath all realities. Not another being in the universe, but the one on whom the entire universe depends. The ground of being, it doesn't replace the king image. It expands the king image. Let's talk about it for a second. Expands the king image. When we think of a king, we think of no one other, the ruler, the highest. Everyone has to come to the king to get anything done. No one else can say, off with their heads but the king. No one else can grant anything but the king. But now think larger. Can you imagine? Because see, I have a hard time sometimes imagining the greatness of God. Imagining how big God actually is. I think of Earth, the planet. That's pretty big. Then I think of our universe. When I look out into the sky and I see sky beyond sky beyond sky, and that's huge. But then I have to tell myself, go further than that. And that sometimes is so hard to do because as humans, we only want to visualize what we can see. But see, God isn't visual. He's a feeling. Not only is he this big, huge, enormous source, but he's this big, huge, enormous source in us. I guess maybe I shouldn't say feeling because feelings change, but I don't really know what else to call it because when I feel God, I feel happiness, joy, love, center. I just feel good. So I don't know, maybe I will stay with feeling because I feel God all the time. And so now it's hard for me to visualize this enormous source, entity, being, because the feelings that I have for God, they're enormous. Like it wants to burst out of my being. I feel it from my gut all the way through the middle of me, all the way up. I feel it throughout my whole body. This feeling, this source within me that is God. When I say ground of being, I understand it a little more because in my being, because I'm grounded in God, ground of being makes sense to me. Why do we need both to describe God? Because both are true, both are needed. We need to be able to describe God as King because it relates to our heart. It speaks to the love, protection, and relationship that we have with God. I mean, you just heard how hard it was for me to describe how I feel about God, how I feel that God is inside me. Sometimes words just aren't enough. And picking the words out of the dictionary to describe something so ultimate, something so big, something so huge, something so magnificent, those words aren't even enough. And King may be the closest that we can come to it. But God is the ground of being. It relates to our understanding. It speaks to God's essence, nature. That is what ground of being means. It speaks to the reality of what God really is, the ground of being, the source of everything. Think of it this way. King of the universe tells you God's role. Ground of being tells you God's nature. One is a metaphor. One is metaphysics. Both are Scripture's attempt to describe the undescribable. 1 Samuel chapter 2, Hannah's prayer. Then Hannah prayed and said, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. In the Lord my horn is lifted high. My mouth boasts over my enemies, for I delight in your deliverance. There is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. Do not keep talking so proudly or let your mouth speak such arrogance. For the Lord is a God who knows, and by him deeds are weighed. The bows of the warriors are broken, but those who stumble are armed with strength. Those who were full hire themselves out for food, but those who were hungry are hungry no more. She who was barren has borne 7 children, but she who has had many sons pines away. The Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down the grave and raises up. The Lord sends poverty and wealth. He humbles and exalts. He raises the poor from the dust, and he lifts the needy from the ash heaps. He seats them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor. For the foundations of the earth are the Lord's, on them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of his faithful servants, but the wicked will be silenced in the place of darkness. It is not by strength that one prevails. Those who oppose the Lord will be broken. The Most High will thunder from heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. Then Elkanah went home to Ramah, but the boy ministered before the Lord under Eli the priest. In chapter 1, Hannah didn't go to Shiloh until Samuel was weaned and ready to be left there. And so at this time, Hannah and Elkanah were leaving their son Samuel at the house of the Lord with Eli the priest. So Hannah prays this prayer because she's leaving her only child, the blessing that God blessed her with, the one thing that she has been wanting, and now she's leaving. She's leaving her child because this is the vow that she made to God. If you give me this child, I will give him back to you. She is praying this prayer as she's leaving her child. It's a prayer of surrender, trust, celebration, strength in letting go, confidence that God is faithful. This is why that prayer was so powerful. She's not weeping in sorrow for leaving her child. She's declaring God's goodness while making one of the hardest choices of her life. But she made that vow, and God stuck by his promise. Hannah had to stick by hers. In the prayer, in verse 1, she says, my heart rejoices in the Lord. In the Lord, my horn is lifted high. Horn, right? Could be a trumpet, a bugle. But no, it's not a horn like an instrument. It's the horn of an animal. When an animal lifts its horn, it's showing its power. It's displaying its strength. It signals dominance or victory. It shows confidence, not fear. Hannah celebrates God for answering her prayer for a son. Heart rejoices. That's deep gratitude. Horn lifted high. Renewed strength, dignity, honor, and power. The symbolic of that is Hannah. The inner soul is rising. That's what our Hannah is, our inner soul, and it's rising. This is not happiness. This is empowerment. Could you imagine, too, talking about the literal version, when Hannah gave her child back to God? Can you imagine how much empowerment that was? Can you imagine you giving a gift to God that has God rejoicing? That's exactly what Hannah did. We're so used to God giving us gifts, God giving us blessings, but we can also give God blessings. We can also give God gifts. It's not required. God doesn't ask anything of us. God doesn't require anything of us. But God delights when we give something. God delights when we rejoice in our giving to God. God delights in that. He delights in us. God is so excited when we follow through, not even just in giving God something, but follow through for ourselves. God delights in that because that's what God wants for us. This is empowerment for our soul. This was empowerment for Hannah. My heart rejoices. That's the soul's awakening into the joy rooted in God, not in circumstance. Hannah wasn't rooted in the fact that she was giving her child away. Hannah rejoiced and was joyful because she was able to give back and she was able to fulfill her vow and her promise to God. Horn lifted high. That's our soul's dignity, authority, confidence, spiritual authority. It's returning. Your identity becomes rooted in God, not the circumstances. So now it doesn't matter what happens, good or bad. You're rooted in God, that whatever happens around you, whatever happens to you, doesn't matter because God is where you're rooted, and that's the only thing that matters. How this resonates in my life, I reconciled my grief in my past, just like I talked about my goodbye tour. I said goodbye to the old version of myself and everything that came along with it, whether good or bad. It didn't matter because now I'm rooted in God. So it doesn't matter what happens in my past. I'm not even looking to my future. I'm right here, right now, today, rooted in God. And today is all that matters. I'm more comfortable in my relationship with God. I'm grounding in God. I'm sitting with God. I'm rooted in God, not just in circumstance. And that means if something great happens, God, thank you so much. I'm so grateful. If something bad happens, I'm not just being like, God, you suck. Brr, brr, brr. No. I'm saying, God, thank you for these lessons. I told this story the other day, and I'll go ahead and tell it today too. I was thinking back in my life when I was with my first long-term partner, and we had issues, but we both tried to overcome those issues. And we moved to Galveston, and it was right before Hurricane Ike happened. Bought a house, we painted, so excited. Everything we thought was going good, but internally we knew we still had issues, but neither one of us were facing the issues in our relationship. Hurricane Ike happens, knocks out the house. We can't live in it. I was so mad. Recently, as I was understanding these verses and being rooted in God, not in circumstance, I went back to that and said, well, God, you caused a hurricane in a place that I had a house and I had nowhere to live. And God said, but were you even supposed to be there? Ooh, ooh. Yes, he did. He said, were you even supposed to be there? And I had to reevaluate that and relook at that and say, yeah, no, I wasn't. Because we should have never been on that trajectory to purchase that house. Before we made that decision, honestly, we had talked about splitting up, and that was the right way to go. Because had we split up, I would not even have been in Galveston with a house to get destroyed by Hurricane Ike. Had I been rooted in my relationship with God, I wouldn't have ever been there. But because I was making decisions based on fear, based on abandonment, based on I had to be with somebody, I was in the wrong place. And when you're in the wrong place, things happen. And at that time in my life, a house was destroyed by a hurricane and I was displaced and had to figure it out. Doesn't mean God wasn't with me doesn't mean God didn't love me. It just means I was in control. Therefore, I put myself in circumstances that I should not have ever been in. And those are the lessons that I'm learning from going through these scriptures and understanding what it means being rooted in God and not the circumstance. Had I been rooted in God and not the circumstance of a relationship breaking up, me being by myself, fearful of being by myself, my abandonment issues, if I had been rooted in God, I would have never had to go through that. I can look back and say, thank you, God, for that lesson. Thank you, God, for showing me where I turned the corner wrong because I wanted to be in control. This also resonates with me because I'm feeling my strength and my soul return. My spiritual empowerment is coming back. If we go to 1 Samuel 2, still in verse 1, my mouth boasts over my enemies. Literal. Hannah rejoices that those who mocked her infertility are silenced. She rejoices that those who mocked her in her infertility are silenced. They weren't silenced because God brought down a hammer on them and never let them have kids. God didn't bring down justice by causing someone else pain, because that's not what God does. God does everything in love. What God did was he brought down justice by giving Hannah her blessing, her baby Samuel, and in turn showed the people who were mocking Hannah what it means to live inside your blessing, what it means to stay steadfast in God, what it means not to worry about those around you, but to keep your eyes focused, your head forward, your steps in movement with God, because God will do what he says he's going to do. And that's what he did for Hannah. He gave her a baby. Eli said, God will bless you. And guess what? God blessed her. God didn't cause Penny or Peninnah not to have any children. He didn't cause death upon her children. God doesn't do justice that way. That's not how it happens. And I just told the story about me moving to Galveston and shouldn't have been there. God didn't cause a hurricane so that way I would be like, oh, shouldn't have been here. Dang it. Should have listened to God. No, the hurricane was already coming there. It was already going to happen. Had I not been there and listened to my inner self and had worthiness in my inner self, I would have never been there. I would have never been through that. Doesn't mean that there wasn't going to be a hurricane that happened. It just means I wouldn't have had to go through that catastrophe in my life. God doesn't cause destruction to show lessons. I do not have the ability, just as Hannah did not have the ability to say, God, that person's being mean to me. That person did this to me, put havoc on their lives. We do not have that ability, and that is not how God works. God does not give vengeance or justice so that way you will feel better about a situation. God sees everything. And God does everything in love, and God does everything for the benefit of each soul that's going through whatever is happening in that moment. And if you think God gives justice on your behalf, that's your ego talking. That's your ego saying that. That's not God. You can't pray to God and say, so-and-so was mean to me today. God, let him have it. And God's like, yeah, I'm going to do that. No, that's not how it works. God says, hey, I know they were mean to you, but they may have something going on in their life. So let me wrap you up in my love and take away that hurt. And let me deal with what's going on in their life. My answer to that, your answer to that should be, you're right, God, and thank you. Thank you for wrapping me in your loving arms and giving me this comfort. I know that whatever happens or whatever needs to happen for that person that did this deed to me that wasn't a great deed, you'll take care of it in your way, in your loving way. Hannah rejoices that those who mocked her infertility are silenced because God blessed her with a baby. Now the symbolic is those enemies, those people that mocked her, that is your inner voice. That's your shame, your comparison, your false identity, your self-doubt, the old narratives that say you are nothing. That is what those are. The soul is now saying, I'm no longer defined by those voices. How that resonates with me, the comments that I've had, you're delusional, you're crazy, you're nuts, they don't bother me. In fact, I'm okay with them because I've learned that my old life was delusional. My old life was that crazy part. Living that way makes no sense to me now. The other ways that it resonates is people listening or not listening to this podcast. I'm okay either way. People giving feedback or not giving feedback, good or bad. I'm okay either way. On social media, giving likes or clicks, no likes or clicks, doesn't matter to me. Because the purpose of this podcast, the purpose of what I'm doing is not for that reason. It's because I'm obeying and I'm following in the steps God has for me. I'm rising above those old shame-driven voices, my old shame-driven voices. My confidence isn't now tied to other people's opinion, what people think of me, how many likes or clicks I can get on social media. My confidence, who I am in myself and in God, is not tied to those things any longer. Let's move on to 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 2. There is no rock like our God. Literal. Hannah declares God to be stable, trustworthy, and unmatched. The symbolic. Your foundation no longer comes from external validation, relationships, old roles, family approval, really anyone's approval. Only one foundation is real. God is the rock, unchanging identity and stability. No outer source can match the inner anchoring that God gives to your soul, your Hannah. How this works for me, skipping any kind of drama. Choosing peace, grounding in God instead of chaos. My stability coming from within, not from any of those outer voices. I am building on the rock. Chapter 2, verse 3. Do not keep talking so proudly. Literal. A warning to the arrogant not to speak as though God does not see. Symbolic. The awakened soul tells the ego, stop talking, stop comparing, stop taking the lead. How many times have you had to stop yourself? How many times have you had to tell yourself, don't say that? We have all had those conversations with ourselves. It reminds me of the little angel and devil on the shoulder. You have one on each, and you tell yourself, if you do the good thing, that's the little angel talking. If you do the bad thing, that's the devil talking. But I realize it's not an angel or a devil. It's your inner soul and your ego. The little angel, your soul, is telling your ego, stop saying that. Oh my, wow. Why would you say that to someone? The soul now sees through the illusion and names them. You may ask yourself, what is the soul naming? Doubt, fear, shame, lies. Those are all the things that the soul names. It's your soul telling you these things don't have the final word, and to name them means to say, this is not who I am. This is not the truth. This does not rule me. It brings the illusion into the light of awareness instead of letting it operate in the shadows. We're bringing it from the darkness into the light so we can see it and get rid of it. This is not saying we never feel them, but it is saying they are no longer the ultimate. They no longer define us. They no longer control the direction of our soul. Their power is broken because our foundation is God and not emotions. How this resonates with me. I ignore the outer voices calling me crazy and delusional. I ignore the pressure to perform or please. Let's talk about that for a moment. You guys may notice that this episode has no video. I was having such a hard time with video because it stopped my flow of things. I was so focused on the camera and I couldn't stand up and move around. And I'm a talk with my hands, a very emotional talker. I need to pace. I need to move. I need to sway back and forth. And I was confined to a chair. But I was doing the video because in doing the research for this podcast and listening to outer voices, it was, you need to do video. It won't go anywhere if you don't do video. You got to do this. You got to do that. And I was listening and following along. I was listening to God on my messages, but then my messages would stop halfway because I was so focused on the camera that I just couldn't be. And again, I'm going to bring up that movie, Pump Up the Volume, where nobody knew who he was and he was behind a microphone with no video. And yes, that was 1994 and we had no video back then, or this is not something that we did, but that was the vision I kept getting, the movie in my head that I kept getting. That was God telling me, you don't have to do video. It is unnecessary. I want you to be you, and you cannot be you when you're confined. Now I'm not confined and I'm feeling fantastic. You can hear the difference in my voice. I hope that you can feel the difference in my spirit. I feel good. I feel alive. I feel me. I feel like myself giving these messages, talking about my experiences, because I'm not worried if I touched my nose, if I moved wrong, if my shirt was straight, if my hair looked on point. This is part of ignoring the pressure to perform or to please. Again, I say, If I get no likes on this podcast, if something doesn't move forward, that's okay. But yet I was doing it in a way that wasn't making me happy. And now I'm ecstatic and I'm me. And if only me and God listen to this podcast, I'm cool. I'm good because me and God, we are loving it. My ego has now taken a back seat. And man, I can tell you this, if you're living in your ego for just a couple of days, let your ego take a back seat. And you can't tell me you are not going to feel good. You can't tell me the change is not going to be in your life. Tell that ego to sit down. It is not welcomed in the driver's seat. Once you do that, tell me how good you feel. The other thing is I'm letting my inner knowing speak louder than my fear. I had that fear. This podcast is not going to be successful if I'm not on video. Now my inner voice said, oh, we don't care. Who cares? We're just going to be us and let the podcast sit where it may, let it go where it may, because all that matters is that we feel good. Me and God, we feel good. And that's what matters. My ego is no longer the loudest voice. God is. God is the loudest voice. Moving on to 1 Samuel 2, verses 4 through 8. The great reversal. I love this. This is probably one of my favorite parts. And again, I'm not very far in, okay? You can see we're only in chapter 2, okay? But this is one of my favorite parts because it's the great reversal. It's the anything can happen. It's that one Hail Mary that came to fruition. God reverses circumstance. This is the literal. Warriors defeated. The weak are strengthened. The poor are lifted. The barren are fruitful. The humble are exalted. Doesn't that sound amazing? Doesn't that sound like a place you want to be? Symbolically, it's your inner world transforming, the inside of you, your soul, everything within you changing. What dominated you loses power. What was weak becomes strong. What felt barren becomes creative. Identity rises up from dust. Spiritual dignity emerges. This is the soul awakening to its true nature. To its true nature. This is where I am. This is how it's resonating with me. I'm a living testimony of how this is working, how this is going. I'm showing you. I am living it as I am doing it. When God said, you will be my living testimony, I laughed. I said, what are you talking about, God? I'm just me. I'm just Carrie Jo. And God said, you will be my living testimony. And this is what this podcast is about. You being my living testimony. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. Some of it may be embarrassing. Putting all your shit out there for the internet, the things that took you away from God, the things that you're shameful of that you wouldn't share with anyone, you've now put on the internet forever and all to hear, all to see. And man, the trepidation that I had when I was doing that. But it's already done now. And God said, you will be my living testimony. And I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. Because I'm walking through these verses and I'm walking through this story and I'm understanding it more and more each day. How this resonates with me. I close the chapter in my old life by doing my goodbye tour. I said goodbye to everything. I said, I'm leaving you there. I never want to visit you again. Ask me about my childhood. I'm going to tell you it was fine. It had some problems, but I'm not there anymore. Ask me about my marriage. I'm going to say, you know what? Had a great time. It had some issues that I didn't realize, but you know what? I was part of those issues. I appreciate the lessons. I appreciate the person that I did those lessons with, but it's now over and done with. So we don't have to talk about it anymore. You can ask me about my job that I poured my blood, sweat, and tears into, and I'll say it was a job. I'm now in my calling. Nothing from the past needs to be dredged up again. I put that to rest. I'm healing, grounding, and rising. My creative part, I've started this podcast. What felt barren becomes creative. What felt barren to me has now become this podcast. This is my creative. I'm following God, even if no one validates it, because God validates it. My inner life is being reversed. My grief has turned to clarity, my weakness to strength, my silence to purpose, my barrenness to creativity. God is blessing me with my great reverse. 1 Samuel 2, verse 8. For the foundations of the earth are the Lord's. Literal. God establishes all creation and he has authority over it. Symbolic. Your soul now recognizes God holds reality. God holds you. There is no instability when the foundation is divine. Fear of losing control dissolves. How this resonates with me. I am grounded in God. I trust God instead of fear, doubt, or anxiety. Doesn't mean I don't have it. Doesn't mean sometimes it doesn't creep up on me. But when it does, I say, you have no place here. In my mind, in my heart, you have no place here because I belong to God. And God has me. So fear, anxiety, doubt, you can move along your way because you have no place in my life. Because I'm a child of God. I am stable, peaceful, and no longer shaken. God holds the pillars of my life. The I am is living inside me. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 9 and 10. The literal, God guards the faithful, defeats darkness, and will raise up a king. The symbolic is the soul experiences God as a protector. The inner knowing, the divine hearing, aka the Samuel, becomes the way God leads you. When she says darkness, that is confusion, self-doubt, fear. That is what she is saying when she is referring to darkness. Those things no longer direct your steps. Your steps are now being directed by your Samuel, your divine hearing, your inner wisdom. Your future feels aligned, not chaotic. When Hannah says he will give strength to his king, she is prophetically speaking of Christ, inner divine kingship, sovereignty of God within you. How this resonates for me. I am following God step by step. I am making decisions not out of fear, but out of alignment with God's guidance. I am led by inner clarity, not by my old wounds. Thank you so much for joining in today. I really appreciate every single one of you and the support that you are giving. If you are enjoying the way that I'm exploring these verses, literally, symbolically, and how it resonates in my life, try looking at it the same way in your life. Talk about it with your friends. Talk about it with your family. See what stands out for you. See if something is resonating within you. Thanks for joining me for Holy Chuckles Podcast, where we remember that God's calling doesn't always make sense, but it's always full of grace. If today's story reminded you that you too are seen, chosen, and loved right where you are, then that's the light shining. So until next time, keep your heart open, your laughter genuine, and your light shining. Well, I'm gonna let